Have you ever felt like your life was perfectly planned, only to have everything change in an instant? Pamela Hartford grew up in a world of luxury, surrounded by the love and guidance of her parents. From lavish birthday parties to private tours of Paris, she had everything a young girl could dream of. But on her 20th birthday, tragedy struck. The loss of her parents left her not only heartbroken, but also burdened with the enormous responsibility of leading her family's empire. With the guidance of her father's trusted advisor, Franklin, Pamela found the strength to rebuild her life and the company. Just when everything seemed stable again, a new figure entered her world, bringing unexpected challenges and a glimpse of hope. As Pamela and Albert's relationship deepened, their shared struggles and dreams wove a story of resilience, friendship, and new beginnings. From a life of privilege to a journey through pain, and finally to a path of healing and growth, Pamela's story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, light can find its way back into our lives. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Pamela Hartford's life was wrapped in a cocoon of opulence and indulgence, thanks to the towering fortune amassed by her father, Richard Hartford, a man whose name was synonymous with power and reverence in the uppermost echelons of the business world. As their only child, Pamela was the radiant center of her parents' universe, enveloped in an existence that many could only fantasize about. Every wish she had was met with eager enthusiasm, and every comfort was provided without question. Her childhood was a symphony of lavishness. Her bedroom was a grand sanctuary filled with treasures from every corner of the globe: luxurious toys, bespoke garments, and rare leather-bound books that whispered stories of adventure and wonder. Sweetheart, what do you desire for your next birthday? A magical celebration at Disney, or perhaps an exclusive tour of Paris? Her mother would inquire, her voice laced with the promise of limitless possibilities. Meanwhile, Richard, ever the pragmatist, would gently remind her, "My dearest Pamela, education is the one true wealth that no one can ever strip from you." And so she was ushered into the most prestigious private schools, where the world's finest educators were beckoned to cultivate her curiosity and intellect with a level of care that bordered on obsession. Pamela's holidays were not marked by the thrill of amusement parks or summer camps. Instead, she traversed ancient ruins and explored hidden galleries, always with a private guide at her side, immersing herself in a world rich with history and knowledge. This extraordinary upbringing molded her into a refined young woman, keenly aware of the influence her status and intellect afforded her. But fate is a cruel master, and Pamela's life was irrevocably shattered on the day she turned 20. It was a crisp autumn morning, with golden leaves swirling in the breeze, as she eagerly prepared for a video call with her parents, who were on a business trip across Europe. She anticipated the usual conversation, her father excitedly discussing new ventures and mapping out the future, ever grooming her to follow in his footsteps. But as the call time approached, the screen remained eerily blank. The clock ticked on, the minutes stretching into a torturous void as her repeated attempts to connect were met with silence. "This is odd," she muttered, her heart beginning to flutter with an unfamiliar anxiety. As the hours dragged on with no word, a suffocating dread began to coil around her. Then the doorbell rang, slicing through the oppressive silence. Pamela descended the grand staircase, her steps heavy with foreboding, and found herself face to face with the family lawyer and two somber-faced executives from her father's firm. Their expressions were grave, their eyes filled with the sorrowful burden of the message they carried. "Pamela," the lawyer began, his voice quivering with a gravity that froze her in place, "there has been a terrible accident. The plane your parents were on, it crashed. There were no survivors." The words hit her like a sledgehammer, each one crushing her soul, tearing the very air from her lungs. Her mind struggled to process the nightmare unfolding before her. She clung to the doorframe, her knees buckling under the weight of the grief that was beginning to engulf her. "This can't be real," she gasped, her voice trembling as the cold grip of denial closed around her heart. "We had so many plans, they can't just be gone." In that excruciating moment, the future she had envisioned with her parents dissolved into dust, leaving behind only the raw, unrelenting pain of their loss. Pamela was suddenly thrust into a dark and lonely world, where she was not only burdened by unbearable sorrow, but also by the immense responsibility of steering the vast Hartford empire, a task she had never imagined facing so soon or so alone. In the haunting days that followed, Pamela grappled with her devastation while the world she knew collapsed around her. The once vibrant mansion, filled with laughter and life, now stood cold and silent, its corridors echoing only with the hollow sounds of her footsteps and the hushed voices of the staff. She felt trapped, suffocated by the heavy mantle of leadership that had been thrust upon her, responsibilities she neither desired nor felt prepared to shoulder. Yet, despite the overwhelming grief and fear that threatened to consume her, Pamela knew she had no choice but to rise above the ashes of her shattered life, even if it meant facing the future with a broken heart and trembling hands. One morning, as Pamela Hartford sat alone in her father's study, surrounded by a mountain of documents and financial reports, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. The intricate web of business operations felt like a labyrinth she could never navigate on her own. She buried her face in her hands, her mind racing with doubts. "How on earth am I supposed to handle all of this?" she muttered to herself, her voice trembling with anxiety. It was in that moment of vulnerability that she remembered Franklin Morris, the man her father had trusted implicitly, his closest confidant and most dependable advisor. With a heart full of hesitation but driven by necessity, Pamela reached for the phone and dialed Franklin's number. The line barely rang before his familiar voice answered, steady and reassuring. "Franklin, it's Pamela. I need your help. I'm drowning in all this." "Pamela, my dear, I've been expecting your call," Franklin replied, his tone a blend of warmth and unwavering support. "Your father always spoke so highly of your potential, and I share his confidence in you. Don't worry, I'll be there first thing tomorrow. We'll tackle this together. You don't have to face this alone." Franklin's words were like a lifeline, pulling Pamela back from the brink of despair. A flicker of hope sparked within her, easing the crushing weight of her newfound responsibilities. The next morning, Franklin arrived at the Hartford mansion, his presence a comforting reminder of her father's enduring legacy. Armed with a folder brimming with documents and a determined expression, Franklin wasted no time. In the grand library where Richard Hartford once orchestrated his business empire, Franklin began to teach Pamela the essentials of managing such a vast enterprise. "Let's start with an overview of the key areas of your business," Franklin suggested, spreading out a detailed organizational chart. "We'll identify where your focus is most needed. Remember, Pamela, I'm here to guide you every step of the way. Together we will honor your parents' legacy." Under Franklin's patient and thorough tutelage, Pamela gradually began to grasp the complexities of the Hartford empire. Each day was a rigorous yet enlightening journey into the world of high-stakes business, with Franklin acting as her mentor. They spent countless hours in the company's stately conference room, where Franklin demystified the intricacies of financial reports, marketing strategies, and global negotiations. "Pamela, every decision must be a calculated move," Franklin explained, tracing his finger over a chart of growth projections. "It's not just about profits. It's about ensuring the long-term stability and integrity of the company. Your father excelled at this, and I see that same strategic insight in you." Initially apprehensive, Pamela slowly found her footing. Franklin's faith in her abilities, coupled with her rapid learning, bolstered her confidence. During one of their sessions, she hesitated before asking, "Franklin, how do I make sure we're steering the company in the right direction?" Her pen hovered above the page, poised yet uncertain. Franklin smiled warmly, his eyes reflecting pride and encouragement. "Trust yourself, Pamela. Continue questioning everything, and never shy away from making tough decisions. You're already thinking like a CEO. Remember, the values your father held: transparency, ethics, those are just as vital as the numbers on the balance sheet." Emboldened by Franklin's wisdom and her father's enduring principles, Pamela began to carve her path as a leader. Her innovative ideas, though sometimes daring, were always meticulously calculated. She spearheaded the introduction of new technologies and sustainable practices, boosting both efficiency and the company's reputation. Gradually, the fruits of her labor became undeniable. Under her stewardship, the Hartford empire not only expanded into new markets but also achieved unprecedented levels of profitability. Skeptics who had once questioned her youth and inexperience were now vocal in their admiration of her vision and resolve. "You're truly coming into your own as an exceptional leader," Pamela Franklin remarked during one of their quarterly reviews. "Your father would be incredibly proud of you." Then, on a gray and rainy autumn afternoon, as the hum of Hartford industries continued unabated, the steady rhythm of corporate life was momentarily disrupted by the arrival of a new candidate for a critical role within the company. Albert Simmons, with his perfectly tailored suit and sleek leather briefcase, exuded confidence and professionalism as he stepped into the polished marble lobby. With a charming smile, he approached the reception desk. "Good morning, I'm Albert Simmons. I have an appointment with Mr. Franklin Morris," he announced, extending a hand in greeting. The receptionist returned his smile, recognizing the name instantly. "Good morning, Mr. Simmons. Mr. Morris has been expecting you. Please follow me," she replied, leading him down a corridor lined with portraits of the company's founders and gleaming awards, each a testament to the Hartford legacy. As Albert Simmons arrived at the door to Franklin Morris's office, he paused briefly to adjust his jacket, took a calming breath, and knocked lightly. The sound of Franklin's commanding yet inviting voice echoed from inside, "Come in." As Albert entered, Franklin rose from his chair with a warm smile, extending a hand in welcome. "Mr. Simmons, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Please have a seat." Franklin gestured toward the chair across from him. "I've had the chance to go over your resume, and I must say, it's quite impressive. I'd love to hear more about your background and how you envision contributing to Hartford Industries." As the interview unfolded, Franklin listened intently, occasionally nodding in approval as Albert spoke. However, midway through their conversation, Albert's gaze shifted to a prominent painting on the wall. The artwork captured a moment from a grand company gala, featuring Richard Hartford and a young Pamela, poised and confident by his side. With genuine curiosity, Albert gestured toward the painting. "If I may ask, who are the individuals in that portrait? They seem to hold significant importance to the company." Franklin turned to look at the painting, a gentle smile softening his features. "That's Richard Hartford, the visionary who founded this company, and beside him is his daughter, Pamela Hartford. Richard was not just a remarkable leader, but also a dear friend. Tragically, we lost him in an accident some time ago, leaving Pamela to step into his role. Despite the tremendous challenge, she has risen to the occasion in ways that would have made Richard proud." Albert nodded thoughtfully, his expression one of sincere respect. "I'm deeply sorry to hear about Mr. Hartford's passing. Stepping into such large shoes is never easy, but it sounds like Pamela has truly embraced her role as leader." "She has indeed," Franklin agreed, his conviction in Pamela's abilities clear. "But now, let's return to you. I'm particularly interested in hearing about your leadership strategies and how you manage high-pressure situations." The conversation delved deeper into management philosophies, innovation, and the complexities of steering a large corporation. Albert spoke with infectious enthusiasm, sharing his experiences with a mix of humility and confidence. His insights into navigating challenges, coupled with his knack for introducing creative solutions, clearly resonated with Franklin. It wasn't just the content of his answers, but the passion behind them that left a lasting impression. As the interview drew to a close, Franklin extended his hand with a firm grip, his decision made. "Albert, I believe your experience, vision, and approach align perfectly with what we value here at Hartford Industries. I'm pleased to offer you a position as an analyst on our team." A broad smile spread across Albert's face as he grasped Franklin's hand in return. "Thank you, Mr. Morris. I'm truly honored and eager to contribute to the future of Hartford Industries. I look forward to what lies ahead." With a sense of mutual respect and anticipation, the interview concluded, signaling the beginning of a new chapter for Albert at Hartford Industries. From the moment he joined the team, Albert's impact was undeniable. He quickly immersed himself in the company's fast-paced environment, applying his technical expertise and strategic foresight to tackle complex challenges. His presence brought fresh energy to the team, and his innovative ideas soon began to reshape the company's operations. In one notable team meeting, the conference room buzzed with the anticipation of managers and directors eager to hear Albert's latest proposal. As he stood before them, Albert confidently presented a comprehensive analysis of a new project aimed at revolutionizing production efficiency while significantly cutting costs. "By leveraging our current capacity and integrating advanced data analysis, we can optimize our operations to boost productivity without sacrificing quality," Albert explained, his voice steady and assured. The room was captivated as he projected detailed charts and tables, each one meticulously illustrating the benefits of his recommendations. As the presentation concluded, the room erupted in applause. Franklin, seated at the head of the table, exchanged a knowing glance with Pamela, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room. The pride in her eyes was unmistakable, a reflection of her father's legacy and the bright future ahead for Hartford Industries with leaders like Albert on board. Initially, Albert's colleagues viewed him with a hint of skepticism, unsure if his ideas could truly deliver the results he promised. However, their doubts quickly dissolved as they saw the compelling data he presented during the meeting. Even the most seasoned executives were impressed by the clarity and precision of his analysis. Among those captivated by Albert's presentation was Pamela Hartford herself. After the meeting, she approached him with a smile that spoke volumes of her approval. "Albert, your work today was outstanding. I'm genuinely impressed by how thoroughly you've understood the intricacies of our operations and proposed such forward-thinking solutions." She praised, her voice filled with admiration. Albert responded with humble sincerity, "Thank you, Pamela. I'm here to help Hartford Industries reach new heights. I truly believe in the potential of our team and what we can accomplish together." His words carried the weight of genuine commitment, and it was clear to Pamela that Albert's contributions were driven by more than just ambition. They were fueled by a deep dedication to the company's success. As the months rolled by, Albert's reputation within Hartford Industries continued to soar. His name became synonymous with efficiency, innovation, and leadership. He led by example, often arriving before sunrise and staying long after most had left. Albert's ability to inspire and motivate his team was unparalleled. He struck a perfect balance between setting high expectations and providing the encouragement needed to achieve them. Franklin, who had been a mentor and a keen observer, acknowledged Albert's impact during one of their conversations. "Albert, you've infused the team with new energy," Franklin remarked, his voice tinged with pride. "Your leadership is shining through, and it's having a ripple effect across the department." With recognition pouring in from all directions, Albert solidified his position as a cornerstone of Hartford Industries. His rise within the company was a direct reflection of his relentless dedication, sharp intellect, and perhaps most importantly, his knack for turning challenges into opportunities. As Albert's role at Hartford Industries grew, so did his relationship with Pamela. What began as professional interactions soon evolved into something more meaningful. Their discussions, once solely focused on business, gradually opened up to include personal reflections and shared interests. One sunny afternoon, while reviewing a project in the company's garden, Pamela remarked, "It's truly refreshing to see someone with such dedication and passion for their work. Albert, you've brought a new perspective that's driving the company forward." Albert met her gaze, a sincere smile on his face. "Thank you, Pamela. It's an honor to work here, especially alongside someone as inspiring as you. I'm learning so much every day." These exchanges became more frequent, and the lines between boss and subordinate began to blur, giving way to a genuine camaraderie. At a corporate event, while discussing future strategies, Pamela and Albert discovered they shared a passion for contemporary art. "I had no idea you were into modern art," Pamela exclaimed, surprised yet delighted, as they realized they had both visited a recent exhibition independently. Albert chuckled. "It's true, I've always found art fascinating. It teaches us so much about innovation and perspective, things we can apply to our work." As the months passed, their professional partnership deepened into a true friendship. What started as business lunches gradually turned into dinners where they shared not just ideas but also stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. They found solace in each other's company, a bond that transcended the walls of the office. Over coffee one day, Pamela confided, "Albert, you've become a true friend. I'm not sure how I would have handled some of the recent challenges without your support." Albert's eyes softened with warmth. "The feeling is mutual, Pamela. I'm here for you, in every way, professionally and personally." Their connection, built on mutual respect and understanding, grew stronger with each passing day, creating a foundation for both the company's continued success and a lasting friendship. As the friendship between Pamela and Albert grew stronger, so did the synergy within Hartford Industries, creating a work environment that thrived on mutual respect and understanding. During a brief pause in one of their many conversations, the topic shifted away from work, and Pamela, ever curious about what drove those around her, turned to Albert with a thoughtful expression. "Albert," she began softly, "you've always shown such unwavering dedication and passion in everything you do. I'm curious what inspires you to be so committed." Albert hesitated, his eyes clouding with distant memories. "My drive comes from a deeply painful chapter in my life," he admitted, his voice tinged with a mix of sadness and resolve. "My father was a respected businessman, someone I looked up to immensely. But everything he built was destroyed when he became the victim of a cruel swindle." Pamela felt a pang of empathy, her heart aching for him. "That must have been incredibly difficult," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Albert nodded, his gaze still far away, lost in the past. "It was devastating for my family. My father couldn't cope with the loss. He turned to alcohol, and it consumed him. Watching him fall apart was one of the hardest things I've ever endured." Without hesitation, Pamela reached out and gently placed her hand on Albert's arm, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. "I'm so sorry, Albert. I can't imagine how much that must have hurt." Albert sighed deeply, the weight of his memories palpable. "After losing him, I made a vow. I promised myself I would rebuild what he lost and become the kind of businessman he could no longer be. That promise has driven me ever since." Hearing Albert share such a personal and painful story touched Pamela deeply. As they walked back to the main building together, the setting sun cast a warm glow over the landscape, the sky ablaze with shades of orange and purple. The conversation hung between them, heavy with emotion yet filled with a newfound connection. Pamela couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. "Albert," she began, her voice filled with sincerity, "your story is incredibly moving. I admire your strength and determination in the face of such hardship." Albert looked at her, a sad yet appreciative smile tugging at his lips. "Thank you, Pamela. It's rare to find someone who truly understands the weight of these experiences. Your kindness means more to me than you know." In the days that followed, the bond between Pamela and Albert only grew stronger. What had started as a professional relationship blossomed into a deep and meaningful friendship. They found themselves confiding in each other, sharing not just work-related concerns but also their hopes, dreams, and fears. Lunches during the workday turned into dinners that extended long into the evening, filled with conversations about books, films, and life. One particularly challenging afternoon, after a tense meeting with investors, Pamela sought out Albert. She found him in a quiet corner of the office, his calm demeanor a balm to her frazzled nerves. "You always seem to find peace, even in the most chaotic moments," she remarked, her voice filled with gratitude for his steady presence. Albert chuckled softly. "I've learned from the best," he replied, his eyes warm. "Your ability to remain composed under pressure inspires me to do the same. I think we've become quite the team, both in work and beyond." These exchanges continued to deepen their connection, turning professional respect into something far more personal and profound. Their friendship became a cornerstone of support, allowing them to navigate the complexities of leadership and the personal challenges they each faced. Together, they forged an alliance that not only benefited their careers but also enriched their lives. As the months slipped by, Pamela and Albert's friendship evolved, subtly weaving threads of a deeper intimacy. The long conversations and shared moments that had become their norm began to hint at something more. On a cool spring evening, while strolling together through the city's quiet streets, their conversation naturally drifted to matters of the heart. What started as a simple friendship was gradually becoming something neither had fully anticipated, but both were quietly embracing. Albert stopped in his tracks, his eyes searching Pamela's with a seriousness tempered by deep affection. "Pamela," he began, his voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "Being by your side these past months has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, both professionally and personally. I think I'm starting to feel something more for you." His heart pounded with a mixture of hope and trepidation as he awaited her response. Pamela felt a warmth bloom within her, a feeling that mirrored Albert's. She met his gaze with a tender smile, her voice soft yet resolute. "Albert, I feel the same way. You've become someone incredibly special to me, more than I ever imagined." With those heartfelt words, their friendship blossomed into a romance, one that grew stronger with each passing day. They began spending more time together outside of work, exploring new places, sharing intimate moments, and building a life filled with joy, trust, and mutual admiration. Their connection deepened, rooted in both their shared experiences and their profound respect for one another. A few months into their relationship, Albert decided it was time to take the next step. He planned a marriage proposal that would reflect the unique bond they had forged. He arranged a private dinner at the very art gallery where they had first connected over their love for modern art. The gallery was beautifully lit, the walls adorned with pieces that symbolized love, unity, and commitment. Under the soft glow of a contemporary chandelier, Albert knelt, his heart racing as he opened a small velvet box. "Pamela," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "you've transformed my life in ways I never thought possible. I can't imagine my future without you by my side. Will you take this journey with me as my wife?" His eyes locked onto hers, filled with hope and unwavering love. Tears of happiness welled in Pamela's eyes as she nodded, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, Albert, I will," she replied, her heart overflowing with emotion. The wedding, held a few months later, was an intimate and elegant affair, a perfect reflection of their journey together. Surrounded by those who had witnessed their growth, they pledged their lives to one another, marking the beginning of a beautiful new chapter as life partners. Back at Hartford Industries, Albert's influence had continued to grow. Though Franklin remained Pamela's principal advisor and closest confidant, Albert had become an integral part of the company's leadership. His innovative ideas and strategic acumen earned him a place at the table for the most critical decisions, and his presence was felt in every major project. The respect he commanded from his colleagues was nearly on par with Franklin's, a testament to the impact he had made. One quiet afternoon, as the usual hum of the office carried on around him, Albert sat alone in his office, deep in thought about the next steps for a significant expansion project. His mind wandered as his eyes drifted to the worn leather wallet on his desk. Driven by an impulse, he reached for it and pulled out a faded photograph. It was an old picture of his father, captured during a moment of success, with a proud smile that Albert had never forgotten. As he stared at the photo, a flood of memories washed over him of the lessons his father had taught him, the hardships they had endured, and the promise he had made to rebuild the legacy that had been lost. In that quiet moment, Albert felt a sense of peace. He had come a long way, driven by that promise, and now with Pamela by his side, he knew that he was not just rebuilding a legacy but creating a new one, a legacy of love, partnership, and unwavering determination. Sitting alone in his sumptuous yet cold office, Albert stared at the faded photograph of his father, a man who was once powerful, respected, and revered, much like Richard Hartford. The dim twilight filtered through the large window, casting long shadows across the rich mahogany furniture, echoing the dark and turbulent thoughts swirling in Albert's mind. "My father was a titan, just like Richard," he muttered, his voice thick with a blend of admiration and bitterness. "But everything he built was destroyed in an instant, all because of a betrayal that shattered our lives." The room seemed to close in on him, the walls lined with framed diplomas and accolades feeling less like honors and more like taunting reminders of a past that had been stripped away. His father's downfall had left Albert with a singular purpose: to restore the family name and reclaim the honor that had been stolen. With the remnants of their fortune, he had dedicated years to learning, attending the finest universities, and building an impeccable resume. His life had become a relentless pursuit of the knowledge and power he needed to right the wrongs of the past. One day, while flipping through the morning newspaper, Albert's eyes landed on an advertisement that seemed almost too serendipitous to be real. Hartford Industries was seeking a new senior analyst. His pulse quickened as he whispered to himself, "This isn't a coincidence, it's destiny." Albert had long believed that Richard Hartford was the man behind the scheme that had ruined his father. The memory of his father, broken and defeated, reignited a long smoldering fire within him. He was determined to infiltrate Hartford Industries, the very company he held responsible for his family's downfall, and execute a plan years in the making. Sitting at his kitchen table, Albert began to map out his strategy. "First, I gain their trust. Then, I reclaim what was taken from us," he vowed, his mind racing with possibilities. He meticulously updated his resume, ensuring that it highlighted the skills and experiences that would make him irresistible to Hartford Industries. Every word and every detail was carefully crafted, as if each keystroke was a calculated move in a deadly game. When the time came to send his application, Albert felt the weight of each keyboard click, knowing that he was taking the first steps into a minefield. A few days later, he found himself face to face with Franklin Morris, the man who had been Richard Hartford's closest confidant. With a confident smile and a carefully crafted persona, Albert navigated the interview with precision. His performance was flawless, and soon enough he was hired. As he sat back in his office, reliving the pivotal moments of that interview and calculating his next moves, his phone suddenly buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. The screen displayed a name that sent a chill down his spine: Edith, his lover and co-conspirator in his more unscrupulous plans. Albert quickly answered, his voice low and controlled to avoid being overheard. "Edith, how are you?" he greeted her, attempting to keep the conversation casual. "Albert, I've been thinking about our plan. How are things progressing? Is everything unfolding as we anticipated?" Edith's voice was tinged with nervous energy, her impatience palpable through the line. Albert glanced around the office, ensuring no one was nearby, before responding in a hushed tone, "Yes, everything is on track. I'm positioning myself exactly where we need to be. The groundwork is being laid." "Good," Edith replied, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and tension. "You know you can rely on me for anything, right? Just say the word and I'll step in." Albert walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline, his mind churning with the complexities of his plan. "I know, Edith, and I appreciate your loyalty. But for now, we need to be patient. I have to solidify my place here before we make any major moves. Don't worry, I'll let you know when it's time to act. Just don't take too long, Albert. I'm eager to see this plan come to fruition, she urged, her voice a mix of eagerness and restlessness. As Albert ended the call, he stood silently, staring out at the darkening sky. The city below was alive with lights, a stark contrast to the shadowy schemes playing out in his mind. He knew that every step forward brought him closer to his goal, but also deeper into a web of deception that could unravel at any moment. The stakes were high, and the risks even higher, but Albert was prepared to see it through no matter the cost. Understood, Albert confirmed, ending the call with a quiet determination that his plan for revenge would be executed with the meticulous precision it demanded. With Edith waiting in the wings and his motives burning fiercely within, Albert knew that each move he made had to be calculated with the utmost care. However, as Albert's vengeful mission deepened, the personal toll on his life became increasingly evident, particularly in his marriage to Pamela. The once strong bond between them began to fray, strained by the weight of his secrets. Pamela, always perceptive and attuned to the subtle shifts in those she loved, started to notice changes in Albert's behavior. On a serene afternoon, as they sat together on the porch of their house, enjoying tea, Pamela couldn't help but observe Albert's restlessness. He was constantly checking his phone, his expression marked by an unease she hadn't seen before. "Albert, you seem distracted lately. Is everything okay at work, or is there something more?" Pamela asked, her voice laced with concern. Caught off guard by her question, Albert hesitated before responding. "Oh yes, everything's fine, dear. Just dealing with some more demanding projects. Nothing for you to worry about," he replied, forcing a smile that barely reached his eyes. Pamela, however, was not easily reassured. "I understand the pressure of work, Albert, but you seem different. You're going out more than usual, and sometimes it feels like you're miles away, even when we're together." Albert realized that his frequent excuses to meet Edith might be raising Pamela's suspicions. He needed to manage the situation delicately. "I'm sorry if I've seemed distant, Pamela. You're right, I should find a better balance. How about we spend more time together? Let's go out for dinner tonight," he suggested, hoping to ease her worries and divert her attention. Pamela smiled, touched by his offer, but a lingering doubt remained in her heart. "That sounds wonderful, Albert. I just want to make sure we're okay," she said, gently squeezing his hand. Albert returned the gesture, but his heart was heavy with the duplicity he was living. "Of course we're fine, Pamela. I'll do everything I can to make sure of that," he assured her, though deep down he knew that each step in his plan only complicated his life with her further. His commitment to revenge was beginning to exact a steep price, threatening to unravel the very fabric of his marriage to the woman he genuinely loved, despite his dark intentions. As time passed, the cracks in their relationship became more pronounced. Albert's repeated absences and increasingly distant behavior only fueled the growing tension between them. Pamela, whose patience and understanding had always been her strengths, began to feel isolated and neglected within her own home. The warm connection they once shared now felt strained, burdened by the secrets Albert kept. On a stormy night, after yet another silent dinner filled with unspoken words, Pamela could no longer hold back her feelings. The rain beat against the windows, echoing the turmoil in her heart as she turned to Albert with a mixture of frustration and sorrow. "Albert, I can't ignore this any longer. There's something you're not telling me. These work commitments have become too frequent and too convenient. We need to be honest with each other if we want our marriage to survive," she said, her voice firm but trembling with emotion. Albert felt a pang of guilt as he looked into Pamela's eyes, seeing the hurt and worry etched across her face. The life he had built with her, the love they had shared, was slipping through his fingers, all because of a plan that had consumed him for so long. Yet even as the truth tugged at him, Albert knew he couldn't abandon his mission, not yet. The path he was on was set, but the cost was becoming painfully clear. Albert, feeling the weight of the inevitable confrontation, struggled to maintain his composure. "Pamela, I promise you everything is under control. I've just been really busy," he replied, his voice strained as he avoided meeting her gaze. "Busy or evasive?" Pamela shot back, her patience wearing thin. "A marriage is built on trust and transparency, Albert. I don't feel like we have that right now." The argument quickly escalated, with Albert growing defensive and Pamela more insistent on getting to the truth. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Albert. The man I married wouldn't shut me out like this, wouldn't make me feel so excluded," she said, her voice trembling with the pain of betrayal. As the tension between them reached a breaking point, Albert, feeling cornered and unable to offer any explanation without revealing his true intentions, made a rash decision. "Maybe I should take some time away. We need space to think," he declared, his words driven more by panic than logic. Pamela, shocked and deeply hurt, simply nodded, her voice hollow as she replied, "If that's what you think you need, then go." Albert hastily packed a small bag and left the house, leaving behind a distraught and confused Pamela. The rain outside mirrored the turmoil within, its relentless patter against the windows echoing the tears that now filled the once warm and loving home. Days passed, and Albert, plagued by guilt and uncertainty, realized that his impulsive decision had only driven a deeper wedge between him and Pamela. Determined to mend the rift, he returned, this time holding a bottle of her favorite wine, a symbolic gesture meant to convey both an apology and a way to mask the true depth of his deceit. He knocked gently on the door, his heart pounding as he waited. When Pamela opened the door, she found him standing there, soaked from the rain, his eyes shadowed by regret and something darker she couldn't quite place. "Pamela, I came to apologize," Albert began, his voice thick with emotion as he held out the bottle. "I was wrong, and I know I hurt you. There's no excuse for the way I've acted. Can we talk?" Pamela, her heart torn between the desire to reconcile and the pain she still felt, slowly nodded and stepped aside to let him in. "Maybe I should hear what you have to say," she said softly, closing the door behind him. Inside the warmth of the living room, as the rain continued to drum against the windows, Albert uncorked the wine and poured 2 glasses. "I brought this, hoping we can put the past few days behind us and start fresh," he said, handing her one of the glasses. Pamela took the glass, her fingers brushing against his as she did. She looked at him, searching his eyes for the sincerity she so desperately wanted to find. "I want to believe we can get past this, Albert, but I need you to be honest with me from now on," she said, her voice a fragile mix of hope and caution. She raised the glass to her lips and took a small sip, trying to ignore the lingering sense of unease that gnawed at her. As they sat together in the dim light of the living room, the wine loosening their tongues, Albert spoke of love, regret, and promises of change. Yet, beneath the surface of his words, hidden within the layers of his charm, his plan continued to unfold, each step bringing him closer to the revenge he sought, even as it threatened to destroy the very thing he had once cherished most. As soon as the wine touched her lips, Pamela felt an intense wave of dizziness wash over her. She tried to call out to Albert to reach for him, but her vision blurred and her legs gave way beneath her. She crumpled to the floor, her body limp and unresponsive. Unbeknownst to her, the wine had been poisoned, a sinister element of Albert's carefully orchestrated plan for revenge. However, in his meticulous plotting, Albert had miscalculated the dosage. Instead of a fatal dose, the poison rendered Pamela unconscious, her body appearing lifeless but still clinging to the fragile thread of life. For what felt like an eternity, Pamela drifted into a dark, dreamless void, lost to the world. Slowly, agonizingly, she began to surface from the depths of unconsciousness. Her mind was foggy, her limbs heavy, as if weighed down by lead. She struggled to make sense of her surroundings, her thoughts a muddled jumble. Panic set in as she realized she was lying on a hard, narrow surface, confined in an unnervingly tight space. Desperately, she tried to move, but her body responded sluggishly, her senses still dulled by the remnants of the poison. Then it hit her, a horrifying realization that sent icy tendrils of fear through her veins. The soft lining, the oppressive stillness, the muffled sound of her ragged breathing. She was inside a coffin. The shock of this discovery sent her heart into a frenzied rhythm, but she forced herself to remain calm, her mind racing as she fought to process the terror of her situation. This couldn't be real, but it was. She was at her funeral. Suddenly, voices began to filter through the dense material of the coffin, growing clearer as her hearing sharpened with the adrenaline coursing through her. The most recognizable voice was Albert's, dripping with feigned sorrow. Pamela fought the urge to scream, to thrash against the confines of her coffin, knowing that to do so now would be futile. "And so we bid farewell to a remarkable woman whose life was as bright as it was brief," Albert's voice echoed above her, carrying a solemn tone that might have fooled everyone else present. Pamela was not only a visionary leader but also a loving friend and partner. She will be deeply missed by all of us. Pamela's heart pounded in her chest as she listened to Albert's words, laced with irony and malevolence. The man she had loved, the man she thought she knew, had orchestrated this horrific betrayal. But why? What could have driven him to such lengths? As Pamela lay still, her fear sharpening her senses, she heard footsteps approach her coffin. Albert's voice became a murmur, and another voice, female, familiar yet distant, joined his. Pamela strained to listen, forcing her body to remain inert as she pieced together the fragments of their conversation. Albert leaned closer to the coffin, his voice barely a whisper, yet every word was crystal clear to Pamela. "You did well, Edith," he murmured, his tone darkly triumphant. "The poison worked just as we intended. With Pamela out of the way, we can finally avenge my father's downfall at Richard's hands." Beside him stood Edith, her identity concealed behind the guise of an accountant, a role designed to deflect any suspicion at the funeral. Her voice, though soft, carried a smug satisfaction. "I'm glad everything went according to plan, Albert. Now, nothing stands in our way. We can take control of what should have been yours all along." As Pamela lay there, paralyzed by the lingering effects of the poison, waves of horror and betrayal crashed over her. The revelation of Albert's true intentions was like a dagger to her heart, each word slicing through the trust and love she had once felt. Albert's vendetta against her father, Richard, was not just a personal grudge, it was a calculated, cold-blooded plot to seize everything Pamela held dear, to dismantle her legacy piece by piece. Inside the coffin, Pamela's mind raced. She had to find a way out to survive this nightmare. But for now, all she could do was listen, wait, and gather every ounce of strength she had left. The man she once loved had turned her life into a living hell. But if she made it out of this, she would ensure that he paid for every betrayal. The shocking revelation of Albert and Edith's betrayal ignited a cold, determined fire within Pamela. Though her body remained weak and unresponsive, her mind raced, frantically searching for a way to escape her dire predicament and expose the true nature of Albert's sinister plan. Trapped inside her coffin, she knew time was running out, but she refused to succumb to the darkness that threatened to engulf her. The funeral concluded with mournful goodbyes and whispered condolences. Albert, ever the master manipulator, approached the grieving attendees with a composed demeanor and an air of somber sincerity. "Pamela always cherished the tranquility and beauty of nature," he began, his voice thick with false sentiment. "She often spoke to me about her wish to rest in a peaceful, remote place, far from the bustle of the city. In honor of her final wishes, we have arranged for her to be laid to rest in a small, secluded town where the serene surroundings will reflect the peace she valued so much." Albert's lies were carefully crafted, and though some of the attendees were surprised by this previously unknown desire of Pamela's, they saw no reason to question it. Trusting Albert's grief as genuine, they accepted his story without protest. "Unfortunately," Albert continued, "this means many of us won't be able to accompany her to her final resting place. But rest assured, she will be laid to rest exactly as she wished." As the mourners began to disperse, each lost in their sorrow, Albert oversaw the final preparations for transporting the coffin. Inside, Pamela could hear everything, but her body, still paralyzed by the poison, refused to respond. She fought against the darkness that threatened to pull her under, but eventually the strain was too much, and she slipped into unconsciousness once more. The coffin was sealed and delivered to a gravedigger named Beau in a nearby town not as remote as Albert had suggested, but distant enough to prevent any unexpected visits. Albert's instructions were clear: the burial was to be carried out discreetly, with no ceremony, by Pamela's supposed wishes. To Beau, it seemed just another job, and he thought little of it beyond what was required. Later that day, Beau and his son Victor set to work, preparing the site for the burial. The morning air was crisp, and a heavy silence hung over the small cemetery, interrupted only by the rhythmic clang of shovels against the earth. "Make sure everything's done right," Victor Beau instructed, his voice steady as he surveyed the freshly dug grave. "We don't want any mistakes. We need to do this according to the instructions." As they worked, a faint, muffled sound began to reach their ears, barely perceptible at first. Victor paused, his brow furrowing in confusion. At first, he dismissed it as the rustle of a nearby animal, but as the sound persisted, it became clear that it was coming from within the coffin itself. Victor's heart skipped a beat, his confusion giving way to alarm. He turned to his father, his voice trembling. "Dad, did you hear that?" Beau, busy with his task, glanced up, his expression puzzled. "Hear what, son?" Victor's eyes were wide, his face pale. "That noise. It's coming from inside the coffin." Beau froze, his shovel hovering in midair as he listened more intently. The sound was faint but unmistakable, a desperate, muffled scratching, like someone trying to claw their way out. The color drained from Beau's face as the horrifying realization dawned on him. This wasn't just another routine burial. Something was wrong. Dropping his shovel, Bo rushed to the coffin, his hands trembling as he motioned for Victor to help. Together, they fumbled with the nails, their panic mounting with each passing second. "Hurry, Victor," Bo urged, his voice shaking with fear and urgency. "We need to open it now." With a final frantic pull, they pried the lid off the coffin. Inside, Pamela lay motionless, her eyes closed, her skin pale and cold to the touch. But just as they feared the worst, her chest rose slightly, a shallow breath, barely noticeable. She was alive, but only just. Victor stared in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. "Dad, she's alive." Bo nodded, his heart racing. "Quick, get the doctor. We need to save her." As Victor ran off to fetch help, Bo stayed by Pamela's side, his mind reeling. This was no accident, this was something far more sinister. He knew now that they had been unwitting participants in a plot much darker than they could have imagined. As Pamela's breath came in ragged gasps, Bo whispered a silent prayer that they had reached her in time. For Pamela, the nightmare was far from over, but as consciousness slowly returned, so did her resolve. She had survived Albert's attempt to erase her, and now, armed with the knowledge of his betrayal, she was more determined than ever to turn the tables on him. She would recover, and when she did, Albert and Edith would learn just how dangerous it was to underestimate her. Bo and Victor exchanged concerned glances, the gravity of Pamela's words sinking in. The shock of discovering her alive had already shaken them, but the realization that her life was still in danger added a new layer of urgency to the situation. Bo nodded, his face serious. "You can trust us, Mom. We'll do whatever we can to keep you safe. No one will know you're here." Victor, equally determined, added, "We'll make sure you have everything you need. You can stay in our cabin as long as you need to recover and plan your next move." Pamela, though still weak, felt a surge of relief at their willingness to help. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Your kindness may have saved my life. I won't forget this." Over the next few days, Pamela rested and gradually regained her strength under Victor's attentive care. The cabin was simple but cozy, offering a quiet refuge where she could gather her thoughts and plan her next steps. As she recovered, Pamela shared more details about what had happened, how Albert, the man she had once loved and trusted, had betrayed her in a calculated scheme to take over her family's company, driven by a vendetta against her late father. Bo and Victor listened intently, their shock turning to resolve. The story they were hearing was unbelievable, yet the evidence of its truth lay right before them in Pamela's survival. They knew that helping her meant risking their safety, but both father and son were committed to doing the right thing. One evening, as they sat together in the dimly lit cabin, Pamela outlined her plan. "I need to gather evidence to expose Albert and his accomplice, Edith, but I can't do it alone. I'll need your help to contact a few trusted people discreetly, people who can help me bring the truth to light." Bo leaned forward, his expression serious. "We're with you, ma'am. Just tell us what you need, and we'll make sure it gets done." Victor nodded in agreement. "We'll be careful. No one will know you're still alive, and we'll make sure to get the message to the right people." Pamela smiled faintly, a mixture of hope and determination in her eyes. "Thank you. With your help, we can turn the tables on Albert and Edith. They thought they buried me, but they have no idea what's coming." With Bo and Victor on her side, Pamela began to set her plan in motion. She knew that the road ahead would be dangerous and that she would need to tread carefully, but she also knew that the truth had a way of coming to light, and with the right allies, she could reclaim her life, her company, and her future. Albert and Edith would soon learn that the woman they thought they had silenced was far from finished, and she was coming for them with a vengeance. Victor and Bo exchanged worried glances, the weight of Pamela's request heavy on their minds, but their sense of justice and willingness to help her spoke louder than their fears. "It's a difficult request, Pamela, but we understand the gravity of the situation. We will keep your secret," Bo assured her, while Victor nodded in agreement. Pamela's eyes softened with gratitude, though her resolve remained steely. "Thank you both. With your help, I hope to set things right and bring justice to those responsible. But for now, I need time to recover and carefully plan my next steps." Over the next few days, the small cabin became Pamela's sanctuary and headquarters. As her strength slowly returned, Victor continued to apply his nursing skills, ensuring she was well cared for, while Bo provided logistical support and moral encouragement. Together, they formed an unlikely but determined alliance, united by a shared sense of duty to confront the injustice that had nearly claimed Pamela's life. One morning, As the sun filtered through the cabin's small windows, Pamela felt a renewed surge of strength and clarity. Sitting at the modest kitchen table, she picked up the phone that Victor had procured for her and dialed a number she knew by heart. The phone rang several times before a familiar voice answered, heavy with the sorrow that had plagued him since her supposed death. "Hello, who is this?" Franklin's voice was cautious, as if he feared receiving more bad news. "Franklin, it's me, Pamela," she said, her voice still weak but resolute. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Franklin responded, his voice trembling with disbelief and emotion. "Pamela, my God, is it you? How is this possible?" Pamela exhaled, relief and anxiety mingling within her. "Yes, Franklin, it's me. I'm alive, but the situation is complicated. I didn't die at the funeral. It was all a setup by Albert. He tried to kill me." Franklin, still reeling from the shock, replied with urgency, "Pamela, this is unbelievable. We need to act immediately. You need to go to the police." "No, Franklin, not yet," Pamela interrupted quickly. "We have to be careful. There's more at stake here than you know. I overheard Albert talking to someone at the funeral. This was all part of his revenge against my father. There's a much larger plot at play." Franklin, sensing the gravity of the situation, composed himself. "I understand, Pamela. You have my full support. Just tell me what you need, and I'll make sure it's done." "Thank you, Franklin. For now, you must keep this a secret. I'm safe where I am, and I have help. I'll contact you again soon to update you and ask for your assistance in exposing everything. Until then, please take care of the company and ensure that Albert doesn't suspect anything," Pamela instructed. "You can count on me, Pamela. I'll protect your interests and be ready whenever you need me," Franklin promised, his voice firm with loyalty and resolve. After ending the call, Pamela sat back, a wave of gratitude washing over her. Despite the danger and uncertainty ahead, she knew she was not alone. With Franklin managing things at the company, and with the unwavering support of Victor and Beau, she felt more confident in her ability to reclaim her life and bring justice to those who had wronged her. The path ahead would be fraught with peril, but with allies she could trust, Pamela was ready to face whatever challenges awaited her. Pamela, now significantly stronger and fueled by an unbreakable determination, was ready to take the next step in her journey to expose Albert and reclaim her life. Seated at the kitchen table with Beau and Victor, who had become her trusted allies in this fight for justice, she meticulously outlined her plan. "I need concrete evidence of Albert's actions and everything he planned against me," Pamela began, her voice steady as her eyes scanned the notebook Victor had provided. "For that, I need access to his communications, emails, messages, everything." Victor, noticing the fierce resolve in her expression, leaned forward with a suggestion. "I know someone who can help a friend from university. He's a cybersecurity expert. I can reach out to him if you think it could make a difference." Pamela's eyes lit up with hope. "That would be perfect. The sooner we can gather the evidence, the better." Victor wasted no time. He stepped out of the room, his phone in hand, and made the call in private to ensure absolute discretion. When he returned, his expression was filled with confidence. "He's on board, Pamela. He said he could start right away. We just need to provide him with the necessary details." With this technical assistance secured, Pamela, Beau, and Victor huddled together once more to finalize their strategy. "Once we gain access to Albert's communications, we need to comb through everything meticulously," Pamela instructed. "Any message, any phone call could be the key to exposing his attempt to kill me and uncovering any other illegal activities he's involved in." Over the following days, Victor's friend worked tirelessly, delving into the digital shadows of Albert's life. Pamela's anticipation grew with each update, her heart a mixture of anxiety and hope. The first pieces of evidence that trickled in were enough to fuel her resolve even further. Emails, encrypted messages, and call logs began to reveal the extent of Albert's treachery. With every incriminating detail uncovered, Pamela felt a wave of both relief and anger. The evidence was damning proof of Albert's involvement in the attempt on her life and his broader scheme to seize control of her company. As Pamela gathered the crucial evidence and began plotting her next moves, an elaborate event was being prepared at Hartford Industries headquarters. The grand party was intended to celebrate Albert's official appointment as the new president of the company, a role he had coveted and manipulated his way into after the supposed death of Pamela. The main hall of Hartford Industries was transformed into a spectacle of opulence. adorned with elegant lighting and filled with the sound of live music. High-ranking employees, key executives, influential stakeholders, and members of the media were all invited to witness this significant moment in the company's history. The event was designed to be a triumphant display of Albert's ascension to power, but unbeknownst to him, it would soon become the stage for his downfall. Pamela, armed with the evidence she needed, was ready to make her move. She knew that this party, meant to solidify Albert's control, would be the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth. With Franklin's support, Victor's technical prowess, and Beau's unwavering loyalty, she had everything she needed to confront Albert and expose his heinous plot to the world. On the night of the party, while Albert basked in the glow of his perceived victory, Pamela prepared for her re-entry into the world she had been forced to leave behind. Dressed simply to avoid recognition until the right moment, she stood in the shadows outside the company's headquarters, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew the risk she was taking, but the thought of letting Albert get away with everything he had done was far more terrifying. As the event reached its peak, with Albert confidently addressing the attendees about his vision for the future of Hartford Industries, Pamela made her move. With Franklin by her side, she walked into the hall, unnoticed at first among the crowd. But as she stepped closer to the stage, the room slowly fell silent, attendees turning to see who had just arrived. When Albert's eyes finally met Pamela's, his confident smile froze, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief and horror. Pamela, now standing tall and unflinching, raised her voice for all to hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have something important to say." The room fell completely silent, all eyes fixed on her. "I am Pamela Hartford, and as you can see, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated," she declared, her voice filled with controlled fury. "But what's even more shocking is the man standing before you today, Albert, who tried to have me killed to steal everything my father and I built." Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd, but Pamela continued, her gaze never leaving Albert's. "I have the evidence to prove every word. Emails, messages, and calls that show the extent of his betrayal, his lies, and his crimes. And tonight, I'm here to make sure the truth comes out." Albert stood there, frozen, his world unraveling as Pamela revealed the truth. The grand party, meant to celebrate his success, had become the scene of his utter disgrace. The very company he sought to control was now slipping through his fingers, exposed for the fraud he was. As Pamela handed over the evidence to the authorities present, the guests began to murmur, shock and disbelief spreading like wildfire. At that moment, Pamela knew she had won the first battle, but she also knew this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more fights to reclaim what was rightfully hers. But with the truth on her side and allies she could trust, Pamela was ready for whatever came next. The atmosphere in the room had been filled with celebration and expectation, as everyone anticipated how Albert would guide Hartford Industries into the future. Edith, elegantly dressed and radiating confidence, moved through the crowd with ease, her champagne glass held high. She wasn't just a guest, she was a key player in Albert's rise to power, her complicity driven by the promises of wealth and influence. She reveled in the success of their plan, her conversations with influential executives laced with hints they would shape together. "Albert is finally where he belongs, and now we can truly begin molding the company's future," she remarked to a group of senior leaders, her smile as sharp as it was knowing. As the evening progressed, the excitement grew. The guests were eager to see Albert's acceptance speech, the moment when he would officially solidify his position as the new president of Hartford Industries. When Albert finally stepped onto the stage, he did so with a charismatic smile, ready to bask in the glory of his newfound power. His speech was polished, filled with promises of innovation and growth, but behind every word lay the dark truth of his ascent. One of the highlights of the evening was the traditional display of videos honoring the journeys of those who had reached leadership positions within the company. These videos were a staple at such events, showcasing the hard work, dedication, and contributions of those who had earned their place at the top. The room quieted as the lights dimmed and the video screen lit up, the guests expecting to see a tribute to Albert's rise. The mood was one of anticipation, with murmurs of admiration and respect filling the hall. But as the video began, the atmosphere quickly shifted. Instead of the expected montage of Albert's achievements, the screen displayed a black background, and the room was filled with the unmistakable sound of voices. Albert's voice, to be precise. The guests, confused at first, soon found themselves listening to a series of recorded conversations between Albert and Edith. The content of these recordings was damning, revealing the full extent of their plot against Pamela. "Are you sure this will work?" Edith's voice asked, tinged with nervousness. "Don't worry, everything is planned. Once she's out of the way, the company will be ours," Albert replied, his tone cold and calculating. The room plunged into a stunned silence. Every eye turned to Albert, who stood frozen on the stage, his once confident smile replaced by a look of sheer terror. The guests, who had come to celebrate his leadership, now stared at him with a mix of shock, disbelief, and anger. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd as the weight of the revelation set in. Albert, desperate to regain control, stumbled over his words. This must be some kind of sick joke," he stammered, his voice quivering with panic. "Someone has manipulated these recordings to harm me. I would never do such a thing." But his protest rang hollow, the truth of the recordings too clear to dismiss. Just as the tension in the room reached its peak, the grand hall's double doors swung open with a resounding crash. All eyes turned to the entrance where Pamela, the woman they believed to be dead, stood tall and unyielding. A collective gasp echoed through the room, followed by a stunned silence as the guests registered what they were seeing. Pamela, alive and very much present, walked down the center of the hall with an air of quiet, commanding authority. She was dressed simply yet elegantly, her face set in a grim expression of determination. Albert's complexion turned ashen as he watched Pamela approach, his mind racing to find an explanation. He stuttered, his voice barely audible over the thudding of his own heart. "Pamela, is it you? This is a misunderstanding. I can explain," he pleaded, his hands trembling as he took a hesitant step toward her. Pamela's gaze was icy as she met his eyes, her voice cutting through the room with a clarity that left no room for doubt. "Explain," she said, her tone laced with controlled fury. "Explain how you plotted to kill me. How do you plan to steal everything my father and I built? The evidence is clear, Albert. And now, so is your fate." The room remained deathly silent, the guests too stunned to move or speak. Edith, who had been standing near the back, attempted to quietly slip away, but the sight of Pamela had rooted her to the spot. She realized with growing horror that her role in the scheme was about to be exposed to the entire company. Pamela turned to face the gathered crowd, her voice strong and resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today not just as the rightful president of Hartford Industries, but as a survivor of a heinous plot orchestrated by the man you see before you and his accomplice." She pointed toward Edith, whose face blanched with fear. "They sought to kill me, to erase me, and to take control of this company for themselves." The crowd erupted into a mix of gasps and shocked whispers, disbelief giving way to outrage. Security personnel, already alerted by the chaos, moved to detain Albert and Edith, who now stood helpless as the walls closed in around them. Albert, still clinging to his shattered composure, tried one last time to sway the crowd. "This is all a misunderstanding. Pamela, we can work this out," he begged, but his voice was drowned out by the murmurings of the guests who had once admired him. Pamela stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, menacing whisper meant only for Albert's ears. "You underestimated me, Albert. You thought you could bury me and take what was mine. But you were wrong. This ends now." As Albert and Edith were escorted away, Pamela watched with a mixture of relief and vindication. The nightmare she had endured was over, but she knew the fight wasn't fully won. There would be questions, investigations, and a long road to rebuild what had been nearly destroyed. But for now, she had reclaimed her life, her company, and her future. The night that was supposed to celebrate Albert's triumph had instead marked his downfall. As the guests slowly began to leave, each shaken by what they had witnessed, it was clear that Hartford Industries had narrowly avoided a disaster thanks to the strength, resilience, and determination of Pamela Hartford. Pamela raised a hand to silence Albert, her clear and powerful voice cutting through the tension in the hall. "There is nothing to explain, Albert," she declared, her presence commanding the room. "The recordings speak for themselves, and your attempt to remove me from the picture has been uncovered." The murmurs among the guests grew louder as they exchanged looks of shock and disbelief. Some began to physically distance themselves from Albert, repelled by the truth of his actions now laid bare. "I am back," Pamela continued, her voice resonating with both authority and relief, "and I am here to ensure that justice is served. Hartford Industries deserves leadership free from corruption and conspiracy." The hall buzzed with the electric energy of Pamela's dramatic revelation. She turned to Albert, who seemed increasingly isolated as the crowd moved away from him, whispering in horror, sensing the perfect moment to expose the full depth of his treachery. Pamela continued her condemnation. "Albert," she began, her voice firm and resolute, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. "I heard everything while I was trapped inside that coffin. Every word of your conspiracy, every plan you made with Edith." A heavy silence followed, with many in the room exchanging astonished looks. Pamela's gaze remained locked on Albert as she delivered her final blow. "While I was recovering, I dedicated my time to uncovering the truth behind the story you used to justify your actions." She paused, ensuring all eyes were on her. "I discovered something quite interesting about your father, Albert. Contrary to what you believed, it was he who attempted to deceive my father, Richard. Your father orchestrated a coup that my father discovered, leading to his rightful dismissal. But in telling the story to you, he twisted the truth, portraying himself as the victim to protect his reputation and feed you a false sense of injustice." Albert's face drained of color, and his confidence shattered as the foundation of his vendetta crumbled. He took a faltering step toward Pamela, his voice trembling as he tried to speak. "Pamela, I didn't know. I was deceived. I was a fool, manipulated by lies. I'm so sorry for all of this." Pamela, her composure unwavering, observed Albert with a mixture of pity and resolve. His sudden realization of the consequences of his actions hung in the air, but she offered no solace. Before she could respond, the sound of hurried footsteps and the crackle of radios filled the hall. The police, already informed of the situation by Pamela, entered with swift determination. The officers moved quickly, surrounding Albert and Edith, whose shock was now fully visible. As the lead officer approached, he addressed Albert with a stern tone. "Albert Green, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and corporate fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As the officer recited his rights, Albert's shoulders slumped in defeat. The once celebrated man now stood humiliated and disgraced before the very people he had sought to control. Edith, who had been rooted in place by shock, was also taken into custody, her future as bleak as Albert's. Pamela watched as the police escorted them out of the hall, the weight of the moment settling over her. The crowd, still reeling from the revelations, began to murmur once more, but now with a tone of admiration for Pamela's strength and resilience. She had not only survived a heinous plot, but had returned to dismantle it in front of everyone who mattered. With Albert and Edith gone, the hall gradually returned to a state of uneasy calm. Pamela took a deep breath, her mind already shifting to the next steps. She knew that the company would need to heal from this ordeal, and she was ready to lead that effort. The path ahead would be challenging, but she was confident in her ability to steer Hartford Industries back to integrity and success. Turning to the gathered crowd, Pamela addressed them one last time. "Today we have witnessed the end of a chapter steeped in betrayal and lies. But Hartford Industries is resilient, just as I am. Together we will rebuild, stronger and more united than ever. Thank you for your trust and for standing with me." The guests, now fully on her side, erupted in applause, their respect for Pamela unshakable. She had proven herself as a leader, not just of the company, but of her destiny. As the applause echoed through the hall, Pamela felt a deep sense of closure. The truth had been revealed, justice was in motion, and the future, though uncertain, was once again in her hands. As the police led Albert Martins and Edith Anderson out of the hall in handcuffs, the room remained in a state of stunned silence, quickly giving way to palpable relief among those who had been closest to Pamela. The swift and decisive action of the police only underscored the gravity of Pamela's revelations and the justice that was now being served. Pamela stood calmly as she watched them go, her emotions a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and determination. Though necessary, the downfall of Albert, a man she had once trusted, brought no joy, only a sense of closure. With Albert and Edith now facing the consequences of their actions, Pamela felt an immense weight lifted from her shoulders. The threat that had hung over her life and her company was finally gone. She could now focus on rebuilding Hartford Industries and moving forward with her life, free from the shadows of betrayal. In the days following the dramatic events, Pamela's thoughts often returned to Bo and Victor, the two men who had played such a crucial role in her survival. She knew that without their courage and compassion, she might never have had the chance to reclaim her life and seek justice. Their selflessness and kindness had made all the difference, and Pamela was determined to find a way to show her deep gratitude. A few days after Albert's arrest, Pamela visited Bo and Victor at their modest home. The small cabin, which had once been her sanctuary, now felt like a place of hope and new beginnings. As she approached, Pamela was greeted with warm smiles from Bo and Victor, who were both pleased to see her looking healthy and strong. "Bo, Victor, "I can never truly thank you enough for everything you've done for me," Pamela began, her voice filled with emotion. "You saved my life and gave me the chance to seek the justice I deserved." Victor, ever modest and kind, shook his head with a humble smile. "We were just doing what anyone should do, Pamela. We're just glad we could help." Pamela nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Victor, I know you had to put your nursing studies on hold because of financial difficulties. I would like to help you return to college and complete your education. I want to cover all your expenses so you can focus on your future." Victor's eyes widened in surprise, his expression a mix of disbelief and gratitude. "Pamela, I don't know what to say. This is more than I could have ever imagined. Thank you, truly." Pamela smiled warmly. "Consider it a small token of my appreciation for the immense favor you both did for me. You gave me a second chance, and I want to do the same for you." Bo, who had been standing quietly beside his son, stepped forward, his eyes glistening with emotion. "You've done more than enough just by surviving, Pamela. Seeing you safe and seeing my son's dreams back on track is more than we could ever ask for. Thank you." With that, the three of them shared a moment of heartfelt connection, united by the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. As Pamela left their home, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but with the support of people like Bo and Victor, she knew she could face anything. Back at Hartford Industries, Pamela began the work of rebuilding the company's reputation and morale. She reinstated the principles of integrity, transparency, and collaboration that her father had instilled in the company. Employees who had felt lost and uncertain in the wake of Albert's brief and destructive reign now found renewed confidence in Pamela's leadership. The company's future was once again bright, and Pamela, standing at the helm, was determined to honor her father's legacy by steering Hartford Industries toward a future filled with hope, innovation, and ethical success. As she reflected on everything that had happened, Pamela knew that this chapter of her life, though marked by betrayal and hardship, had also revealed the strength of her spirit and the power of true friendship. And with that knowledge, she was ready to face whatever the future held. With Pamela's financial support, Victor re-enrolled in university, picking up where he left off and pursuing his dream of becoming a nurse. His dedication to the profession grew even stronger, fueled by his gratitude toward Pamela and a deep desire to make a positive impact on others, just as he had for her. When Victor finally graduated, the ceremony was a moment of immense pride for him and Bo. Pamela, of course, was there in the front row, her eyes shining with pride and satisfaction as she watched Victor cross the stage to receive his diploma. The joy of seeing him achieve his dream was overwhelming, knowing that this was just the beginning of a bright future for him. In the months that followed, as Victor embarked on his new career as a nurse, he and Pamela found themselves meeting more frequently. What started as simple catch-ups to express gratitude and share updates about their lives gradually blossomed into a deep and meaningful friendship. They discovered a shared passion for helping others, a love for nature, and a mutual appreciation for art and literature. On a sunny afternoon, as they strolled through the city, discussing everything from books to future aspirations, Pamela suddenly paused and turned to Victor with an affectionate smile. "You know, Victor, I never imagined I'd find someone who could understand so deeply what I went through. You've been a true friend." Victor, whose admiration for Pamela had only deepened over time, felt his heart skip a beat at her words. "Pamela, being by your side has been one of the greatest joys of my life. You inspire me every day," he confessed, meeting her gaze with sincerity. In that moment, what had been a strong friendship began to gently transform into something more. It was as if fate had brought them together to heal the wounds of their pasts and build a future filled with hope and love. Unlike Albert, whose actions had been driven by vengeance and deceit, Victor's love for Pamela was pure and genuine. He valued honesty and mutual respect above all, offering unwavering support and celebrating her victories while standing by her side during difficult times. As time passed, their bond only deepened, rooted in a foundation of trust, admiration, and shared values. Their days were filled with laughter, heartfelt conversations, and a commitment to uplifting and supporting one another. Together, they created a life filled with joy, learning, and a profound sense of partnership. Finally, on a quiet autumn night beneath a starry sky, Victor and Pamela stood together, hand in hand, and made a heartfelt promise to each other. Under the twinkling constellations, they sealed their commitment with a tender and passionate kiss, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their lives as soulmates. With hearts intertwined, they were ready to face whatever life had in store, knowing that their love born from trust, respect, and shared experiences would carry them through any challenge. As we come to the end of this incredible journey, we're left with powerful lessons about resilience, friendship, and the strength of true love. Pamela's story shows us that even in the face of betrayal and adversity, with the right people by our side and a determination to seek justice, we can overcome anything. What have you learned from this story? What lesson or message will you bring into your own life? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please comment below and share one thing you've learned that you plan to put into practice. If you liked this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring content. Thank you for watching.